Important interview for you next. As the first children to arrive in this country, the first children in dire need of medical treatment to arrive in this country from Gaza have arrived this week, and we will speak to some of the people responsible for A, them getting here, and B, them receiving treatment. And I think I'll pose the question before they even come into the studio of how on earth we've ended up being a country where only two have come, and only now, since that bombardment of Gaza began. It is 11:49 and you are listening to James O'Brien on LBC. I took a call the other day from a contact who was telling me that they were expecting two children to arrive at Heathrow Airport imminently, who were coming here to receive a relatively urgent medical treatment. I mean, I guess the children still in Gaza in need of rather more urgent medical treatment wouldn't even be able to make the journey in the first place. But they said something to me that I couldn't believe. I did a double take. I made them repeat themselves. Two things. The first thing they said was that these are the first children to come here from Gaza for medical treatment. And the second thing they said was that it had taken 17 months to secure the visas. So the battles had been fought essentially with the current and the previous government, and I subsequently discovered that none of this would have happened had it not been for the work of an organisation called Project Pure Hope, which is a coalition of health leaders in the UK and humanitarians committed to working towards providing life-saving medical care and support to children who are victims of this conflict, regardless of their nationality, religion or ethnicity. And two of the founders of Project Pure Hope, Dr. Farzana Rahman and Omar Din, are with me now. Farzana, I should start by asking you to fact-check me. Was that all true? The 17 months, the fact that these two girls are the first children to come here from Gaza, and the fact that you've had to be lobbying tirelessly to make this happen?
Yeah, it's true. And probably the thing to kind of add in here is this is all privately funded. So there is no cost to the taxpayer. But as you say, James, it has been a really long road with a lot of challenges.
Why? I mean, I know that that's a slightly leading question, but in a nutshell, why has it been so hard?
I think indecision and fear. And at the end of it, what we had were children who were dying. So in the 17 months, we're so happy that we brought these two kids. But this all started with a little boy who was 3 years old, who we wanted to help, who had some of the most severe burns any of us have ever seen, who was in a healthcare system without anaesthetic, and who we tried to save. And that little boy died on Christmas Day. And so many children have died. And this is privately funded care for children, and it has been an uphill battle.
Omar, when you set up the organisation, when you set up Project Pure Hope, did you have much inkling of how high some of these obstacles would be? I mean, given, as Farzana has stressed, given that it is you're raising your own money, you're fundraising to make this happen, why would there be a problem getting children to come here on the charities ticket to receive treatment that they urgently need?
We thought it'd be quite straightforward, is the answer. I mean, we've worked in healthcare for a long time, and some of us have been involved in delivering care very proudly to refugees from different crises, including Ukraine, Iraq, Afghanistan, Syria. And so whilst those were NHS schemes, and we recognised that this wouldn't be one of them, we didn't think this was very different to what we would be doing because we're experienced in doing that work. So, yeah, we did think it would be straightforward. And the fact that it's taken this long, obviously we've learnt a lot along the way, and we've managed to engage with lots of different people, but it really shouldn't take this long.
The broader initiative, the overall initiative, has seen, I think, 200 children relocated for medical treatment. Why did these two come here? What was it about what we can provide, or what was the fit?
Yeah, and those kind of 200 have been distributed across a number of different countries who have, in the large part, paid for that through kind of government funds. This is obviously privately funded. And so we kind of, in the first instance, for the children to leave Gaza, that's vetted by COGAP, which is the Israeli organisation in charge of security and aid in the region, the WHO, who have kind of raised the crisis that children are facing, And then once they were in Egypt, they were then assessed by an on-the-ground team and then by specialist clinicians in the UK to make sure that we were bringing children who could really benefit from specialist care.
So can you tell us a little about them? Should we start with Gina, who's 5, I think?
Yeah, she's 5. She's got an eye condition that, if is not treated, will lead to her losing her sight. She suffers from post-traumatic stress. If you can imagine what the last 18 months have been like, her and her family have been victims of bombardment. And so she's a really scared little girl, like all of our children. And I think that's what we see. And then Rama is 12. She has a kind of chronic bowel issue, which is very significant. But she was terrified when they were running from the bombs that because she couldn't run, her family would die. And she's 12 years old. So these kids, they've got the injuries that we are treating. But I think for me, one of the things that really hit me when I met them was just the depth of the psychological trauma that these children have. And I don't know how you can even begin to heal, but we're hoping that in this safe space, it will be a place of healing and love and safety before they then, go back to somewhere safe. And
they'll get psychological support as well while they're here.
Yeah, so our support is holistic in that they're going to get treatment for their specific injuries and illnesses. But we're wrapping that around with everything from social care through to psychological therapy. And again, all of that will be privately funded through the funds that we raise.
Can I ask you a question? Do you keep stressing that because you're worried about how some people might respond to a perception that it's being paid for by the NHS?
100%. I mean, we've seen...
that's grim, isn't it?
Yeah, we've seen over the past sort of 24 hours where this great news has been shared.
Yes.
What some of the reaction to that has been. And we understand it, but it's clearly the case that, we've gone over and above to make sure that nothing that we are doing has any impact either to the NHS system. So these are not NHS hospitals in which the children will be treated, but in private wings, and that we have private funds.
And yet those of us who would be happy to see our tax pounds spent on looking after just a tiny fraction of the children whose lives have been upended by the events in Gaza, no one takes any notice of us anymore. It sometimes feels, doesn't it? But I was worried that would be your answer to the question, because you both hit that button 3 or 4 times since you came into the studio. Absolutely no British taxpayers' money has been spent upon this project, which leads me to the next question, which is, do we have any idea how many children there are in Gaza in need and not receiving it? Because we see footage constantly of bombed out hospitals. We know that healthcare, we know aid has been cut off. Well, I do. I'm not sure how many people following coverage in the British media. They're more concerned about an Irish rap group at the moment. But the aid has been cut off for 2 months now. Do we have any idea how many children are in dire straits?
It's thousands and thousands. We have the highest number of child amputees in the world concentrated in Gaza. And to give some context, the children who have suffered amputation, traumatic amputation, often require years to heal. And we're talking about thousands, and that's just one small set. So we are talking about thousands. And we're not talking about bringing thousands to the UK. We're talking about bringing a really small number, because you hear thousands and perhaps it's difficult to imagine that one child, but these are our children. They are like the children in the lives of all of the listeners here. And I think about what it's like when my son is ill and he's got a cold, or he's a bit more ill and I need to take him to A&E. I think about how my world stops, but I know I've got somewhere to go. And then I think about the parents of these children who, your child is sick, the sickest that they can be, and there is nowhere for them to go.
And it makes it more powerful, perhaps, that when Gina's mother gave an interview to another broadcaster, one of the first things she said was that she hoped other children would get the chance to benefit from the chance to receive medical care overseas. I used to have a problem, Omar, with the word holistic. I used to think it was a bit Californian, but I was an idiot, and I'm not anymore. Well, at least not on that front. I'm still an idiot in lots of other ways, because I know what it means, and it's crucial, and it's desperately important. But it rather, in the context of what Farzana has just said, some of these mental scars, let alone the physical ones, of the children that are still there, will never heal.
Yeah.
It's a permanent trauma.
That's right, but there's still hope, right? And every child deserves hope. That's our strapline. And it's important because we embody that through doing everything we can to give the most excellent service and healthcare provision that we can to our patients. One of the principles that we have at Project Pure Hope is excellence. And that's, we're not just simply bringing over 2 patients, we're going to do some treatment and then send them home. We want every single aspect of their care delivery, their experience of being here, and when they get back as well, to be excellent. So look, we're not going to do absolutely everything, but we're going to do everything we can in the most excellent way possible.
I'm a big fan of excellence. Farzana, how can people, and a lot of people, just because I imagine you're quite bruised by some of the reactions that you've described, an awful lot of people want to know how they can help, how they can get involved in supporting the work that Project Pure Hope does.
I think there are 2 ways. So we already have the next few cases that we could help lined up, ready to go. And we need funding to, add extra funding to that. But also just please ask your representatives in government to support this. As we said, there is no burden to the British taxpayer, but delays cost lives.
Alan asked the question you may not want to answer. He just wonders whether, on air or off air, would you be able to name people who had actually worked hard to block this from happening? I don't want you to get into any trouble, but just tell Alan quietly, are there people who you could actually make a list of?
It's probably a conversation for a private conversation for another day, but we are really
But his instincts are correct. Some people have worked harder than others to stop
we are just keen to get these children.
I think if it's okay with you,
yes,
we'd just like to thank the people who have supported us.
Absolutely.
So absolutely huge thanks to everybody who's donated so far. We've had private charitable donations in excess of £500,000.
Wow.
The remaining over £500,000 has come from a number of charities, including Virgin Unite, Islamic Relief, Reed Foundation. So we want to say a huge thank you to everybody who's participated. And if people want to donate now, please go to purehope.co.uk. All of our details are on there. You can see the work that we've done to date, even before these 2 children arrived, and we'll keep updating you on that.
purehope.co.uk, and an opportunity there to give whatever you can, actually, to this incredible cause, which, as I said, I couldn't quite believe. Just on last Friday, when I took a call, I couldn't believe they were the first children to come here, and it had taken 17 months just to get the visas.
We hope not the last, right?
We certainly do, and hopefully people listening to this will be able to play a small part in making sure of that, making that come true. Back you go to purehope.co.uk. Farzana, thank you. I should have added you're a consultant radiologist, which is why you sound like you know what you're talking about. Dr. Farzana Rahman and Omar Din, a healthcare executive and both co-founders of Project Pure Hope. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Go on once more then, purehope.co.uk. Just do it.